What's up, everybody? It is week 9 of Testimony Tuesday. And on the last episode, I talked to you guys about when I went to San Diego and I was able to actually remove an evil spirit from my friend because God allowed me to do so. So on this episode, it's going to be part 2 about what happened that same day when I was in San Diego. So after all of that happened, I went back to the room, and my roommate so happened to be the same guy who was my roommate in Canada when I went to NatCat Championships. The guy that was talking to me about this book and this false god named Thoth trying to get me to read it. So I had to knock on the door because I left my key inside, and when he opened the door, he seemed like he wanted to talk. So I went and sat down in the room, and then we started to talk. And while we were talking, like, everything was going fine. It was just a normal conversation. But then he started to bring up these teachings again about this false god and the things he had read in this book and what he had researched. And like, while he was telling me these things, I knew that my body wasn't really up for it today, because I could feel like it was getting into a rage point once again. And like, in the inside, whenever he would start speaking these things to me, I knew it was wrong and like that it wasn't what should have been spoken. But of course I wasn't going to make him feel bad and like just completely down him or tell him to stop speaking to me. So basically, whenever he would say something to me, I would just speak back to him in the terms of what I know that God can do. I had the Holy Spirit by this time, so it was not agreeing with any of the things that he was saying. And then randomly out of my mouth, the words spoke to him and said, "You are going to read the entire Bible." And then he answered me back and he was like, "Yeah, I was thinking about reading the Bible, but I was going to do it on my own time." Then God spoke out of my mouth once again, like I couldn't control it. The words just like flew out, and he yelled and he was like, "No, you're gonna do it." And then I was just like looking at him like, "My bad, like I didn't even mean to scream at you." And then he was just looking like, "This doesn't sound like Teejay." Then he tried to debate once again, but then that's when God spoke to him one last time and said, "The books that you have been reading have tricked and fooled you, and you've been filled with lies, but you are going to read the entire Bible and you will be a strong man of God." And then I was just looking at him like surprised, like, wow, that's like really great to hear God speak this to this man, because he's actually a good, kind spirit. Like, he's really nice, and I just want him to do well. I wish the best for him, and I know that he's going to change because God spoke so. Then after that happened, somehow he was like on the ground. I don't know why he got on the ground, but then his hand was like in my hand, and my hand was like shaking really bad, and it lifted to the sky. And then he was just looking at me like, I don't know what he was feeling, but afterwards I asked him how did he feel? And he said he felt lighter, like a weight had lifted off of him. So then I went to sleep that night, and then the next day I saw him, and he randomly just said to me, "I love you." And I was like, "Oh, I love you too, bro." And then I went back home to Gainesville, and he actually wanted to talk to me. But while I was on the plane, God had told me to give him my Living Bible, because that's the Bible I had read when I first started, and that's like what got me on the journey I am now. So I took him my Living Bible once we got back home, and when I gave it to him, I was like teaching him like how the books work and everything, and it actually had a Bible challenge inside of the Living Bible. So I told him if he just used this guide, it'll allow him to be able to read the Bible all the way through. So once I explained all this to him, he was like definitely on board. He was happy about everything, and he seemed like he decided that he was gonna move forward and actually try, because I was presenting it to him as in it's up to you, it's your decision, you don't have to. But like, when he would present those books and everything to me, it seemed like he was trying to force me. Like, he would get upset if I didn't want to do it, but I would just stay calm and just speak the truth. So after this happened, a few weeks afterwards, I invited him to actually come to my place because he wanted to talk. So I told him to come over, and we were just sitting down on the balcony, just relaxing. And then that's when he started to talk about these false teachings once again. Like, he kept trying to find a way to go around it and like figure out maybe what I'm learning is the truth. But for some reason, well, I know the reason, God would always have a response to him, and then he would look puzzled, like, I don't have a comeback. And he was like, you're right, I don't know, so give me a little time and then I'll see. And I was like, all right, well, that's fine. So he started to kind of get a little aggressive, and he was like yelling. He didn't really want to listen. Like, he was standing up, and I was like, oh, if you're gonna stand up, like, I'm not gonna talk to you about this, because it's not that serious to where you're angry and that you have to stand up and yell. I'm not gonna have you sitting here yelling about this subject. You can either sit down and we can continue talking, or if you're gonna keep yelling, I'm gonna just go inside, because I'm not gonna have the vein popping out of the side of my neck. So basically, we came inside and he was like, you're right, I actually messed up. I didn't yell, I'm gonna leave and then I'll come back another time. And I was like, you don't have to leave. I mean, I'm not kicking you out. I was just saying that you just have to tone it down a bit. So then I was talking to him about the experiences that had happened to me in the past and what God had been doing in my life. And then when we were inside of the house, he wasn't really yelling, but he was like saying words that didn't feel good to my spirit, because he was talking about my God. And I know that's the one true living God that created everything. So like the way he was talking about him, and it like sounded like he hated him basically, even though he doesn't even know him and has a relationship with him. So it was kind of hurting me to the core. And actually, I wasn't like going back and forth with him at this point. I was just listening to what he had to say. And then that's when he finally, well, he had this some type of bag on, and he was trying to pull something out of the bag to show me. I guess it was, I don't know exactly what it was because I never got to see it, but he wanted to show me. He was like, I got something, see, I'll show you this, and this is gonna help you. And but he never was able to pull it out. And before he came over my house, God did tell me to anoint my place, and that's what I had did. And he actually saw the oil on the door when he came. He's like, oh, I saw your holy oil. It's running down the door. But back to what I was saying, he never got to pull it out. And then after he actually decided to leave, that's when I like felt really bad, because I couldn't believe that anybody would talk about God in that tone. And it made me realize how like we all need help, but there's like certain people who actually are kind of blind and don't really know the truth, and they think that their way is how it should go. But I'm not really forcefully pushing anything on anyone, but I'm of course gonna help and allow people to know the one true living God, so that way they can also gain the Holy Spirit and see how much it helps them in their day-to-day life. So that was just basically the main goal that I had for him, because I knew the truth because of what had been happening to me. So I wanted the same for him, and I want the same for anyone else. But I know God told me that he was not supposed to touch those books ever again, because if he did, then God was gonna deal with him and allow him to see that this was wrong. And of course, God doesn't punish us to be evil, but just like our parents in the past, whenever we were younger, or even now, if we did something that wasn't right and they wanted us to stop doing it, they just put us on some type of punishment, so that way it could teach us to never do that again, and we would learn and actually become smarter and gain knowledge from that. So that's the same thing with God. So I have been talking to him a lot, and he's seeming like more in tune, and he is very spiritual, but he just doesn't believe in Jesus as being the one true living God. So after this, I actually was home a few weeks afterwards from like trying to help him. because he was getting more aware of the things I had been speaking to him, and it was kind of touching him more because he would come back with questions week after week, and all the questions that he would ask, I would have an answer for it because God was speaking through me to him to help him. And then one night I went home to go to sleep, and while I was sleeping, I woke up inside like a dark place, and it was like pitch black, but I could still see kind of. And then in front of me, I saw like a grayish, gloomy looking evil spirit, and it was looking at me so mad. And then I was sleeping, but my hands like were shaking really bad, and they rose up. And as soon as that happened, it disappeared. And when I opened my eyes, I was sleeping, and my hands were just like how they were in the spirit realm. And I talked to my grandma about it, and God spoke to her and told her that that was a demon angry with me because I was helping the guy actually know the truth, and it was trying to get in the way to stop that. But of course I was not afraid because God had given me the power to actually remove demons and everything. So it didn't make me scared, it just made me want to fight harder to help him. So I've been talking to him more often, and everything's going well right now. It's actually in a good space. So this is going to wrap it up for week 9. I'm not going to really go into much depth about anything else, but next week there's going to be a great story about what happens when I go back to St. Pete for the first time after actually feeling the power that God gave me in my hand. It actually came into play when I went back home. My mom and my grandma, they actually got to see it hands-on. So I'll talk to you guys next week.